this video, I'm going to talk about why Bitcoin went mainstream in 2021 and why it's risky now not to hold any Bitcoin in your portfolio. Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Dinesh. I currently work as an engineer in London, and I make these videos as a bit of a side hobby. Now in this video, I'm hoping to answer the following questions. What is Bitcoin? Why should I care? What is happening to drive the price of Bitcoin? Now, could the price of Bitcoin go even higher? And lastly, how can I buy Bitcoin? See, this is not a recommendation to buy Bitcoin. I am not an expert. This is purely for educational purposes. So please do your own research before you do anything with your money. At the time I'm making this video, Bitcoin is at an all-time high and it appears to be breaking records every single day. At the moment, it's currently under $35,000. And actually this year, Bitcoin beat gold and stocks. Now, if you invested $1,000 10 years ago in Google, it would be worth $6,000. $1,000 invested in Facebook would be worth $9,000. $1,000 invested in Amazon would be worth $22,000. Whereas £1,000 invested in Netflix would be worth $34,000. 1,000 in Tesla would be worth 159,000, but 1,000 invested in Bitcoin in 2020 would now be worth $237 million, which is absolutely mind-blowing. But firstly, what is Bitcoin? Now, Bitcoin is simply a digital currency that exists on a public ledger known as a blockchain. Now, it was created by an anonymous person or group under the name Satoshi Nakamoto in 2009. Essentially, a blockchain is a series of blocks that contain data such as the sender, receiver, and the amount of Bitcoin sent. And these blocks are chained together in chronological order. Moreover, everyone can see this ledger and it can't be tampered with. For this reason, it's known as a decentralized currency, so trust is baked straight into the technology. Traditional currencies or fiat currencies like the pound or the dollar have value because we all agree it has value, and the value of it is backed up by the government. Because we don't need a middleman to verify the transaction. We can completely cut out the middleman, so we don't need banks or governments to regulate the flow of Bitcoin. But why should I care? Well, actually, governments and banks around the world have been doing increasingly exotic things with money. They've printed trillions of dollars into the market. In fact, 22% of all USD in the market today was only printed in 2020. But what happens when it all unwinds? Well, who knows? And the governments and central banks are run by extremely competent and smart people, but we're trusting that they're able to make the best decision 100% of the time. But what if there's a small chance they're not able to make the right decision? Well, that's where Bitcoin comes in. Bitcoin is essentially a hedge against traditional fiat currencies, and it's completely orthogonal to current markets. And this is why I think it's actually risky not to have a small percentage of your portfolio invested in Bitcoin. But what is happening to drive the price of Bitcoin at the moment? Now, institutional investors have started buying billions of pounds of Bitcoin at an alarming rate. Now, to further support, US regulators have recently accepted crypto stablecoins as payment, and this has caused the price of Bitcoin to surge to record highs in 2021. But could the price of Bitcoin go even higher? Now, before I answer that, a sub to this channel would be absolutely fantastic. Now, I think the price of Bitcoin could actually rise for 3 reasons. Number one, the market capitalization or the total size of Bitcoin is still fairly small. It's only $600 billion. And the market cap of gold is in the trillions. And many people, and especially institutional investors, are starting to think of Bitcoin as digital gold. And if the value or the price of Bitcoin reaches parity to gold, then JP Morgan actually estimates that 1 Bitcoin would be worth $146,000. Now, so far, the price of Bitcoin has largely been driven by these large institutional investors, or whales as they're known. And relatively little activity has come from the retail sector, which is essentially like people like you and me. And according to Google Trends, the interest in Bitcoin is rising, but it's nowhere near the interest in the last peak of 2017. I mean, it's speculative to say, but if Bitcoin is rallying the way it is with the current interest, imagine the boost to the price of Bitcoin if it matches or exceeds the interest of the 2017 peak. And lastly, 3, banks have predicted that the price of Bitcoin would almost triple this year. Now, JP Morgan, who have thrown shade on Bitcoin in the past, have come around and said Bitcoin could exceed $100,000 over the next year or so. Citibank told clients in a note that Bitcoin could reach as high as $318,000 in 2021. Tyler and Cameron Winklevoss believe Bitcoin being a better gold than gold, which means that price rising to $500,000 a Bitcoin is now inevitable. So to sum up in the famous words of the carpenters, we've only just begun. So how do I buy Bitcoin? Well, actually, it's very easy. So now you've heard a little bit about Bitcoin and a little bit about what it could become. So how do you now buy it? Now, it's actually really easy. You can download an app called Coinbase, which is probably the most popular way to start investing in cryptocurrencies. And I've put a link down below, which you can click, and you can sign up for a Coinbase account. And that way you actually get a small amount of Bitcoin. And as a disclaimer, I get a really small amount of Bitcoin in return. But when should you buy it? I mean, a lot of people I know are actually waiting for the dip. They're waiting for the price of Bitcoin to fall so they can make a much larger profit later on. But if the bank predictions are anything to go by, we've only just begun. So I think the best thing now is to invest as early as possible. And remember, it's not about timing the markets, it's about time in the markets. Even better, you could pound cost average, which is buying the Bitcoin at regular intervals, just like you do on the stock market. And that's personally what I do. Now, thanks so much for listening. In summary, we've learned that Bitcoin is essentially just a digital currency, and it's an alternative to traditional currencies like the pound and the dollar. And the price of Bitcoin is being driven to astronomical levels by institutional investors who are now starting to believe this Bitcoin narrative. And many institutions and really smart guys believe that the price of Bitcoin, if it reaches parity to gold, could be worth hundreds of thousands of pounds of Bitcoin. I mean, as a result of this, the price of Bitcoin is expected to almost triple this year. I mean, it's no guarantee, but it's sort of the best case prediction at the moment. And the best way to buy Bitcoin is to click on the link below, open a Coinbase account, and own a small piece of the future. Now, thanks so much for listening. I hope that was useful. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.